George, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kyle. And hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. Kyle told me about this. I think I'd been at HubSpot for 2 weeks when I first heard about this group, but it was a great example for me of why it was exciting to join HubSpot because this there's this great community co-investment, right? I think everybody I've met at HubSpot cares a lot about hearing from the community. We have folks like Dana helping organize these communities from the integration side, and then all of you as admins. And so I'm super excited to be part of that. I warned Kyle that I'm not here to sort of announce any product features. So if something even sounds like that, it's probably a misunderstanding. Count on the roadmap for that. But I am very much here for questions and feature requests and so on. And so I have a few slides to go through to kind of share what Frame AI was and what it's becoming now and sort of what that might mean. But I hope we'll have most of the time to chat and ask your tough ones. I guess Kyle also already warned you that I can get pretty nerdy. My background's in machine learning and AI. I love what I do. And feel free to tell me to cool it down in the chat if things get too spicy from a technical perspective. But I'm going to share my screen here. Can you all see my Kyle? Are you seeing this?
Yep.
All right, great. So I'll kind of start just from saying, even prior to Frame AI, this like really motivating question for myself and a lot of folks who work in AI is just how amazingly good humans are at working in a world with no instructions, no configuration, nothing. So I love this photograph because I have kids. I have a 2-year-old right now, and I can tell this little girl on the right, she is learning. Nobody had to tell her exactly how that she should watch this kid or how she should watch him or give 1,000 examples. She's learning by watching and observing what's going on in the world around her, and she's going to be better at buttoning buttons because she's cribbing notes from this fellow who's maybe a year older, right? And humans are just incredible at this. We communicate with each other in open-ended ways. We watch what each other are doing. We learn from experience, and we bring that knowledge into our work. And so, for a lot of SMBs, that's what your employees are doing, especially in a small company. Everybody wears lots of hats and they learn from each other. And it is really kind of ironic that software is the opposite of this. Historically, our SaaS software, I think y'all as an admin group probably feel this the most. Historically, everything that the computer can do needs to be extremely manually configured and input. And even in previous generations of machine learning, lots of training, etc., you have to really handhold and set up a system to be able to do work in a much more brittle way than a human can learn to do it very naturally. And so there's flip sides to this. I mean, the advantage of these structured systems is that when we spend time configuring computer systems really explicitly, we have control of them. We know what they're going to do. And we have scalability to them, right? They can kind of amplify what we're capable of. But what if we could have both of those things? What if we could have sort of flexibility, learning from experience, and also have some degree of control and scalability? And that's really what our goal was at Frame AI. It's to help use all of the unstructured information that businesses generate to produce, to bring that into people's workflows and processes and basically make their businesses run more effectively. So when we were an independent company, we built an architecture. We actually weren't facing SMBs mainly. That's part of my adventure at HubSpot, is learning what it means to bring these capabilities to a much broader group of businesses. We were facing enterprises and saying, hey, we're going to take your email threads, your sales calls, your support tickets, your chat conversations. We're going to, in much the same way that humans working with those customer facing channels learn about your business and learn how to conduct operations, whether it's sales or service, etc. We're going to set up AI to get that information out of those data sources and into operational processes that help you do more work. So some examples. On the left, these are a bunch of different sort of enterprise-sized companies that you might recognize that we worked with. On the right, you have a bunch of the capabilities that we helped build for those teams, right? So this Frame was a platform where we could bring unstructured data like emails and calls and so on into our system, analyze it with AI, and push it out to drive these different features that included things like assessing sentiment, escalating service calls that needed help, figuring out what was driving the main costs in your operations, QA and coaching for customers. A lot of features that you've probably seen in different sort of point solution platforms. We were doing that across data sources that enterprises had for the very complex workflows that they had built on across multiple systems. So that's the origin story of Frame. It's this kind of building a platform to use unstructured data to help customer-facing teams be more efficient through a wide variety of features. And the way that we did this, and by the way, I'm losing Kyle. I don't have the chat when I'm looking at my slides here. So
that's okay. They are not behaving themselves.
oh, am I already getting a slowdown Poindexter?
No. You're doing great. They're just you showed a screenshot of Salesforce, and they are all just talking about how HubSpot is so much better than Salesforce. So.
Oh, certainly didn't mean to cast any aspersions there. But yeah, so the way that we did this, so I imagine some of you in this group have heard about a technique called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. So when you use a lot of AI features that you use in HubSpot or in other platforms, works something like this. You do something in the interface, and then behind the scenes, it goes out to a library of information and it says, hey, what do I know that's relevant to this user's query? Let me get that information out of your CRM, out of whatever. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to rewrite the thing you asked as a prompt, send that over to an AI, and then give you back the answer. And so a lot of features that you might use in an interactive basis when you're using, if you're not using ChatGPT or something directly, you might on an interactive basis be plugging into a tool that then calls these APIs under the hood, or it has its own LLM that it reaches out to under the hood, and you wait for an answer. And I bring this all up because it's not actually what we do. So this is retrieval augmented generation, and it works really well if you've got users coming in with queries that they want to respond to. And what we did that was a little bit different is what we call stream trigger augmented generation, or STAG, as opposed to RAG. And this was this different idea that instead of waiting for a user to query something, we were going to kind of keep our own catalog of things users care about in advance. We were going to know, hey, product users care about how different features are being used and how their sentiment is accumulating. Service managers care about things like whether their staff are being polite. Essentially, we have this list of queries that we know are important all the time, and that the people who care about them, they really care about them in almost any kind of communication that comes through, not just in the tickets that they can read. So we would take all of these different streaming communication sources and pipe their communication into this fixed set of queries. And when we found something interesting, and I'll say something about how we decide something is interesting, we could trigger alerts and push out information that then could kind of trigger a workflow downstream. So the big difference between this, and you don't have to understand this diagram to hopefully to get anything out of my out of the rest of my talk, but the big difference is that we were doing proactive AI. How can we automatically analyze data that's coming into your system, communications, documents, etc., for the things we know you care about as a business, and then push that information actively to where you need to go. Maybe as an alert, but maybe also as just preparing that information so that when maybe the next time you go and you look at that account, we've already prepared this entire list of the new concerns that got raised for that particular account. Or the next time you go to look at your dashboard for your service, for your customer service operations, you can see that there was a big spike triggered by a new topic that you never heard of before because all your customers were having login issues or something along those lines. So we were doing that kind of proactive analysis. And this last bit, and this is the easiest slide on here, I think, but the really cool thing is you can chain together these different queries to build up really capable features. So this is, again, we're not announcing any features, not describing them. This is actually kind of a schematic of a system we built for a pre-acquisition customer. But if you know in advance some of the things people care about, you can not just call one LLM query, but actually chain them together to extract information that you care about on an ongoing basis. So for example, as calls come in, we can use what people are talking about on the call to build a profile of your business and say, oh, these are the products you sell. This is the overall differentiation that you have, et cetera. And we can use that business profile to power more processing downstream. We can say, what are customers' common objections that they're bringing up in relation to this business? What are the sales policies that we can observe taking place on your calls? And if once we've extracted that background information, we can push it forward so that we can make better answers to questions like, what's my next best action on this one account, right? And if instead of just saying something generic that any salesperson at any company could do, can we bring forward the context that we've learned about your company to make a much more targeted version of that same next best action? So again, I'm kind of flying through these. We can dig into details here, but the type of work that we did, it's not an either or between the kind of proactive data analysis that we were providing or the reactive AI that you might be used to. The two of them actually work really well together, because we can at Frame build up a set of information about your business, about your deals, about your customers that provide really valuable context. And then when you come in to use a feature that's specific to what you're trying to do in HubSpot, maybe you're in Sales Hub trying to prepare for your next meeting, or maybe you're using Copilot to ask about all of your deals in Florida. Instead of those tools starting from scratch with no context about your business, they have this context that we've built up proactively that can plug into those tools. So this became the vision of what we could do at HubSpot. We basically are working in the background as a proactive processing layer to analyze communication and bring up this context that's specific to your business and your operations and your customers, that then becomes part of the background information for other AI features. So you're never going to see a feature in HubSpot that just says, oh, this was Frame. This is the feature they bought Frame to build. Instead, what we hope you'll see, and I'll get into some more details of this, is that across all of HubSpot, lots of AI features benefit from having more context about your business. And you can really tell the difference between, hey, by doing this in HubSpot in our AI, I have all of this context built in that's helping the AI give a better answer, as opposed to if I just ask a generic chatbot in some other experience. So hopefully a lot of you saw a lot of these things a lot of AI features come out in Spotlight a couple of weeks ago. So I think there were over 200 features announced. Probably about 80 to 90 of those involved some degree of AI. One of the first things we were doing under the hood for those releases is actually using knowledge about a company to improve transcription of phone calls, right? Like historically, when you look at transcripts and you feed a raw phone call into a transcription engine, that engine doesn't know what your business does, what it sells. And as a result, it mistranscribes things that are brand names and the people's names who are involved in the call, et cetera. And we can make a massive improvement to that by bringing context into the transcription AI and improve. And that has effects downstream when you try to use that transcript to build other features. So that's pretty much as far as we've gotten since the acquisition in terms of integrating deeply into the AI features at HubSpot. But when it comes to inbound, you're going to see a lot more exciting stuff and a lot of things that benefit from the higher level context that Frame is able to provide and add to those to those features. Another couple things I wanted to put on the table for discussion items. If you didn't see it at and this is basically me running through here are the things that you're seeing publicly about HubSpot's AI strategy, and this is how Frame fits into them. So you'll also see us doing some thought leadership around the Breeze intelligence stack, right? So this is the idea that AI is not just one sort of special hyper intelligent bot. It's actually layers of systems that work together to give you a really effective result. And Frame is really down here at these bottom two layers, at this context and intelligence layer, where we're taking the data that you integrate into HubSpot and using it to make information that's more effective, both for integrations and for applications. And one of the things I'm really excited to learn from this community is, where's the inputs and outputs that are most exciting to you? What is the integrations community and the admin community are often like right on this edge of, how do I bring into HubSpot things that aren't already there? I want to know what kind of information you're most excited about having our AI analyze. And also then bringing that out into processes that you don't necessarily run inside HubSpot, or that you need an integration in order to run in HubSpot, like communities and so on. And where do you want the information that we have about the rest of the business to be available to your integrations? I guess this is also the right slide just to mention that our goal here is to add value, first off, across the stack to integrations, and not just to the data that's being generated inside HubSpot, but to any other external data that you choose to bring into HubSpot through Data Hub. You're also hearing us talk a lot about agents. I think Kyle mentioned, there's been a lot of Service Hub releases lately, including Customer Agent, which is getting really great sort of metrics in terms of its impact of the number of tickets it can respond to correctly. I'm bringing up here a slide that just came out today from KPMG, actually doing a survey, and obviously agents are for businesses of all sizes a pretty high priority. The majority of companies the vast majority of companies are either deploying or piloting AI agents already in Q1 2025. The work Frame does in terms of getting context out of your communications is basically making those agents smarter, right? If you have an AI agent that's talking to a customer, you don't want it to have to go back and analyze a whole bunch of phone calls and take 10 minutes to respond to them. Instead, Frame can proactively analyze the calls that customer has had with your team in the past and build up kind of a dossier and a profile about what are the primary concerns of that customer. And that's going to let our agents, like Customer Agent, have that information and give much more tailored responses when they're talking to individual customers. Another aspect of what we're trying to do is be a big part of making our AI trustworthy. So, this is another one of these KPMG graphs, and I want to draw your attention to the bottom left here, where companies are kind of past this question of should we adopt AI. I think everybody who's kind of growth oriented is already thinking about how should we adopt AI. And they're on to the second level concerns of like, what are the accuracy and the fairness of our outputs? As there's been a substantial growth year over year, and how many people think of that as their biggest challenge to adopting AI. So one of the things that we do, that the acquisition helps us that our goals for success in the acquisition is that we can use our framework as a place where we can do really continuous monitoring inside HubSpot to make sure that we are understanding the implications, that basically all of the AI extraction that we're doing from unstructured data is both trustworthy and fair, and also so that we can kind of prove that to the end users. So a big part of what my team is working on is explainability. How do we bring forward, you saw that big diagram of all of these different AI products chaining together to build something useful for the user. Well, we want to make sure that we keep in mind the provenance of what HubSpot knows about your, if we're going to tell you, if we're going to surface the idea that one of your deals has a blocker, we should be able to tell you the exact conversation where that happened, so that you can dive in and see for yourself if you agree with the AI. So we're going to be doing a lot in the background to make it easy for HubSpot features across the platform to explain why they believe what they believe and help you learn to trust them as well. So kind of summing it up, and this is where I'll leave it and open up to comments. The three things that are on my mind that I hope that you'll see from a result of Frame's acquisition. One is that in terms of sort of batteries included everywhere from the standpoint of AI, we're going to make it much easier to bring a consistent set of context using AI into each part of the product experience. And so hopefully you're already seeing this in Spring Spotlight. At Inbound, you'll see it even more, that there's just AI is no longer like one feature off to the side in HubSpot. It's actually integrated with every process, and you're feeling that context. You're basically feeling like HubSpot knows your business very well in each of the places where you interact. That's this part number two. We don't want to be giving you generic AI products that are giving you advice or predictions that could be relevant to any business. HubSpot, you as admins, you help businesses share a lot of very specific information about how they work in HubSpot. And every bit of that configuration and every bit of the unstructured information that flows into HubSpot should result in the platform really understanding your business like an employee that's been there for a while. And so I hope what you'll see sort of by the end of the year is that when you use AI to help you do work, it feels like working with somebody who has been at your business for years and knows the ins and outs and doesn't have to be told, oh, we don't sell that anymore, for example. And then the last piece that we're going to be enabling is a lot more proactive features and proactive recommendations. So in addition to being able to go into places and use AI to accelerate your work streams, we want to be able to tell users where they should be putting their attention and kind of bringing the problems to them that are the most valuable for them to solve. And because Frame does proactive processing of unstructured data, we're a piece of that puzzle of making the data, drawing your attention to the right places. So I'm going to back out of my slides here, and let's see if I've managed to confuse everybody.
No, this is great. I just an interesting sort of meta comment I want to point out to everyone. As I was organizing this session with George and the one a couple weeks ago on cash flow, it occurred to me that these two acquisitions they mean very different things. A couple weeks ago when we were talking about cash flow, it was clear Sarah knew certain features were coming and could not share them because, we want to keep it a surprise, insider information, publicly traded company until Inbound comes. But, you acquire a CPQ company, you expect them to build CPQ style features. George and the Frame team are very different. They are like this infusion of AI expertise into the product org that then as individual product teams have ideas for how they could use AI to make their products better. They can lean on George to do it, but George and his team didn't come with a product roadmap if we're going to build these things. And so I would love to hear from all of you, either in the chat or the Q&A. How could AI make HubSpot better? Like, what would you love to see in a dream world scenario? What is AI doing? One comment I want to call out here that just came through, George. Joshua, who's here a lot, one of our regulars, says, I do not feel like HubSpot knows my business very well or any of my clients. It works very well when I set it up, but it doesn't understand it. And I think that's it. I think Joshua, George is not saying this is the today state, but we are moving toward a world where we can solve that exact problem. Our smart CRM is sometimes kind of dumb when it comes to understanding the nuances of a business conversation, right? And that's something we want to fix.
Yeah, 100%, Joshua. That's definitely the change that we're trying to manage here. I think that's kind of a status quo for a lot of software. It's kind of what I was trying to get at in that first slide is, if you don't tell only what you model explicitly in the CRM historically does anything for you. And we want to make it more possible for not everything to have to be manually configured, especially things that don't fit naturally into a configuration interface. Like there's just certain ways your company talks about its products, and we want to be able to match that without you having to check 1,000 boxes to describe how you want us to talk. I would actually really love to know on the plus and minus side, are there any specific places where it does feel like the product knows your business well right now? Like, are there success stories there, or things that are at least relatively like you were extremely excited that you could get that even through configuration you could express something that helped HubSpot work better for you? And then conversely, and maybe more importantly, I would love just scenarios, like specific types of details about your business that are just incredibly hard to configure, either painful or you can't configure them at all, and as a result, HubSpot doesn't know your business.
Yeah, friends, if you could drop that kind of stuff into the chat, I will be exporting this all out and sharing it with George and his team afterward. So even if we're not able to read them out on this call, they will be shared and stored and get to the right places. This is, I think, an important moment in the history of HubSpot as our product team figures out what it means to be AI first, and would love to have lots of admin input on how we can do that right and how we're already doing it right, and if there's anything we've gotten wrong, and your worries and your hopes and everything. There are George, I don't know if you can see the chat when you're sharing. If you want to stop sharing, there's a lot of stuff coming into the chat. I'll just read out a couple of these. Antoine says, idea of next step, detect next customer inside your prospect, better ways to connect with prospect, dashboard and KPIs. Scott says, I would love to see AI make our reports and dashboards easier to create and optimize for non-technical users. I think we've made some good progress on that, but it sounds like there's more we could do. There's so much coming through the chat, I can't scroll. I dream of Breeze being able to audit a portal, Jorge says. I think that's really interesting. Break down the health of each area, like workflows, emails, data hygiene. Portal auditing is a thing we've talked about at the HubSpot Hug sometimes, and that feels like a programmatic thing AI could do really quickly and really well, but it's actually kind of hard to teach a human how to do. Evaldus wants a Clippy AI type thing in HubSpot.
It has to be like you, Kyle. It has
apparently,
to.
yeah. Yeah, we'll get there. Personalized workflow based on info. Yeah, there are lots of ideas pouring in here. Keep them coming, everybody. Like I said, we won't be able to read through them all right this minute, but they will all make it to George in the end. George, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to engage with this stuff in the chat a bit? Do you want to Q&A?
I'm gonna. So certainly, if people want to jump on the mic and do Q&A, I'll prioritize that. I can pick off a few of these comments to respond to, because this is great. I love seeing this. I'm literally going to use AI to help me analyze this chat after the conversation. But yeah, Scott, to your point, the industry type is one of the things I'm very excited about. So there's already, HubSpot has a brand identity model that goes into a little bit more detail than just industry. But one of the things that we've been talking about a lot internally is, where does part of what we bring to the picture as a company in general is to be a little bit opinionated about what are the useful things. How do we break up the big problem of understanding your business into smaller parts that make sense? And certainly those parts might be very different for some industries than for others. I know, like from talking to Sarika at CPQ, the difference between somebody who's an e-commerce provider or a manufacturer or a service business is enormous in their space, right? And so we're trying to be attuned to that and trying to make sure that at each level of that AI context, where appropriately we are using these categorizations to say, okay, if you are a manufacturing business, I need to know this about you. If you're a SaaS business, I need to know this about you, and maintaining different sets of contextual information depending on the type of business you're in. So I certainly hope you feel like your industry is understood, and hopefully a lot more detail than that by the end of the year. I'm also seeing a lot of these things about packaging, and totally understand it. A lot of that is, certainly outside of my purview or pay grade. But I will say that something we talk about a lot is how to make sure that this benefit impacts every tier of HubSpot, right? So we do think a lot about how can we make it cost effective to bring AI context to every portal if possible at all. So this isn't being thought of as as something where we don't want only a small slice of SMBs to get the benefits of AI. We want to put it in a way that's accessible to as many as possible. Yes, SaaS is not the same as business banking. Um, Scott, it's pretty funny that you bring that up. We worked closely with Encino, one of the main business operating systems. And so the FinServ sector is near and dear to our hearts in terms of the surprising levels of complication. In some industries, misunderstandings by AI have very different significance for different industries, right? So that's another part of the puzzle is how do we set a standard that is useful for everybody and then go beyond that standard in the places where it's absolutely necessary.
So I do want to hop into the Q&A. If you all want to hop over there real quick and upvote your favorite questions, and then feel free to come back to the chat and keep dropping in your thoughts, your experiences, your hopes, your regrets, whatever it may be that you want the product team to know about. This chat is turning into a pretty incredible repository of informed admin opinions. So there's a huge value. But I am no longer looking at the chat. I'm now looking at the Q&A because Bevy doesn't let me look at both. I'm just gonna start reading some of these out to you. So Joshua again with 9 upvotes here. Trying to apply AI in VOC. I assume that's voice of customer. I don't know. I'm facing skepticism from stakeholders without traceability to the sources and possible over-indexing on outliers. E.g., how many people said this, or where did this insight come from? How do you think about that?
Yeah, a lot is part of it, is the answer in terms of it. So we post-sales service and VOC were some of our core use cases as an independent company. So it's something that the moment we got here, we started talking with Service Hub and having some great conversations there. And they are certainly sort of the most, if you think about me as an internal infrastructure provider, Service Hub is among my prime customers for the explainability that I mentioned in the presentation. So making sure that we can attribute feedback assessments to really specific to individual conversations. So without saying the specifics of the features there, it is one of the bigger technical challenges that my team is focused on, is how do we keep the paper trail for every bit of AI insight that's being generated up platform back to the sources it came from. And we're going to make a lot of that navigable. It's not easy because of the way that the industry has evolved, right? You may use a wide variety. Some people are using Meet, some people are using Teams, some people are using Zoom. You might use a lot of different tools in order to have your conversations with customers. And those tools often do you probably experience this as admins, but they do varying degrees of even confirming in doing a good job of aligning the call with the participants and so on. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we can use that information to help you filter data wherever it's available. And also, I don't want to say fail gracefully, but gracefully bucket information when it's not available so that okay, let me just exclude sales calls from this VOC because it's a different cohort than my existing customers, as an example.
Great. Chris asked a question that I'm happy to tackle, but willing to let you have if you want it. For the record, can we please out loud explain the difference between Breeze AI and Breeze Intelligence?
Kyle, I'm going to have you stick with the marketing messaging here.
Yeah. So Breeze Intelligence is a separate paid offering from HubSpot. It is credit-based. It is our first instance, I think, of usage-based pricing. And it is at its heart an enrichment platform. It is based on our acquisition of Clearbit, but it is expanding in the number of things it powers. So we have buyer intent. We have now research intent. To access these tools, you need to have some level of credit subscription. And then you pay per record that you enrich, whether that's adding a research intent company to your database or whatever the case may be. All of that separate SKU of paid features. When we talk about Breeze AI generally, we're talking about everything AI in HubSpot. So that includes Copilot, which is a free feature included in every single subscription. It includes things like agents, which are rolling out. Typically, the pattern seems to be these are pro level features per hub. So if you have Sales Hub Professional, you get a prospecting agent included in that. If you have Service Hub Professional, you get customer agent and soon knowledge base agent included in that at no additional cost. If you have content hub, you get content agent. If you have marketing hub, you get a social agent. All of these are just rolled into the pro subscription. They are not a separate add-on or a separate cost. And then it also includes, in addition to Copilot and these agents, all the other little AI features getting sprinkled about: summarizing records, building reports, building workflows, revising content, all those kinds of things. So Breeze is meant to be a blanket branding term for everything AI in HubSpot. I find it a little confusing that Breeze Intelligence is also called Breeze, even though it is AI powered. It's a different thing and it's a paid thing. But I would expect, my anticipation is anything George's team helps other product teams build will typically just be rolled into, if it's a Service Hub feature, it's going to be it included in your Service Hub subscription. I've not heard rumors of like paid AI add-ons. I'm not saying it would never happen, but currently everything is structured that way. Chris, I don't know if that gets at what you were asking, but I hope it helps. Salim asks, this might not be for your team, but will HubSpot allow us to add additional documentation to the training data similar to what custom GPTs allow in ChatGPT?
Yeah, so I can say that we're definitely trying to make sure that we reach good coverage over the course of the year in 3 categories of unstructured data, right? One of them that I've talked a lot about is communications data. So your calls, your emails with customers, support tickets, etc. Those are all really valuable sources of the customer's voice and information. Another one came up with the Breeze Intelligence. We call this sometimes world data. What is out there when you're prospecting? What is there in public to help you understand your customers? And then finally, there's this content, and that includes things like marketing content, but also like internal PDFs. And I think we have a beta related to some PDF choices that's available right now. So we absolutely are working in that direction of being able to ingest that content. From my point of view, if you can use content to train your reps, you should be able to use content to improve your AI as well. And so I think that's a big part of the technical capabilities that we're building out right now.
Yeah. Salim, I apologize if this is total ignorance. I've never built a custom GPT. But something I want to point out is if you haven't played around, this is for all of you, not just Salim. If you haven't played around with Dharmesh's latest passion project, agent.ai, the agent builder in there is pretty cool. You can, for free, build an agent that pulls in, it uses different documentation, pulls stuff from HubSpot, feeds stuff through ChatGPT's latest models, and does output. And it's pretty powerful. I'm not a super technical person, but I found it pretty easy to build one that evaluates terms of service contracts. I could just feed them in there and it could tell me if there's anything I should be hesitant to agree to. And you all may recall Dharmesh's last passion project was called ChatSpot, which is now incorporated into the HubSpot platform as Copilot. I do not know the future of agent.ai. I don't know the future of customizability of agents in HubSpot, but if the pattern holds, sometime in the future, months or years from now, some similar thing to the agent.ai agent builder could someday exist in HubSpot. And that would probably get to a lot of what you're asking about, Salim. So I highly recommend everyone plays around with agent.ai, because even though it's totally separate, it's a separate website, it's not a HubSpot product right now. I suspect if it works well, it's just a matter of time before it comes under the HubSpot umbrella. And so if you want to be ahead of that curve, be ahead of that curve. All right. Jessica says, oh, hey, Jess. All right. I know you. Is there a world coming where I can be very intentional about how I teach HubSpot my business, uploading my sales process, my backend ops process, etc., and then HubSpot could course correct my reps to follow that stated process?
That last part's a very interesting detail on that. So I think in general, there's several different aspects to bring together that we're trying to bring together. One is just kind of coverage on the AI capabilities where we can make improvements. Another part is control. What is the efficient way for you to configure that? Is it very central? Are there ways for us to reuse there's places where you can configure your brand identity that helps significantly with Content Hub generation tasks, right? We would rather you not have to, if you tell us something in brand identity, you shouldn't have to tell us separately the same information somewhere else. But realistically, because for many teams, Service Hub and Content Hub might be managed by different people and interact with it, we also have to kind of respect that part of the org chart. So I would say that it's definitely an active topic of conversation. How can we make the different types of configuration processes you have for AI? How can we consolidate them where it's practical to do so? How can we make them interact with each other more effectively, and so on? Your point at that last mile of getting your reps to follow the same process is a really interesting one. I think we've had a lot of conversations with this on the Sales Hub side. Also, there's increasingly one of the big opportunities in AI. There's a lot of focus on things that are frontline opportunities in AI, things that help your sort of the most scaled part of your business in terms of service representatives, sales representatives, et cetera. But one of the other things that I think can make a big second order effect for companies is bringing information out of those conversations and to admins and helping them focus their time and making your teams more effective. So I'll definitely take that particular use case and that dynamic of sort of process adherence back up the line into some of those conversations. I guess just briefly, since I didn't touch on it in my presentation, one way that we think about AI features, like if you're I'm kind of be curious about where your minds are as admins. I put them into sort of 3 stair steps. The first stair step is, what can we do to improve frontline conversations and experiences, right? That's your most scaled reps, your sales reps and your service reps. How can we make them more effective and their time more efficient as individuals? Then the next level up is at the team level, where we say, okay, how can we make the person sitting on top of the Service Hub process or the Sales Hub process or the Marketing Hub process have a better opportunity to manage and lever the strengths of their team by having observation in their own processes. And then the last one is cross hub. How do we make sure that your sales people are benefiting from your service conversations? How do we make sure that your marketing content addresses sales objections and so on? So I'd actually love to hear use cases there, especially in categories 2 or 3, which I think are, things we're in a very special position to provide, compared to tools that only face a service rep or a sales rep.
Yeah, that's great. Jeanette says, how much of what is going into the platform from a futures perspective is included in core product versus add-ons? Breeze Intelligence large package is much more money than what my biz and most clients can afford. Packaging questions are hard. I think a sufficient answer there. I don't know if you have insights, George, and that you can share into how we think about this.
My connection bugged out for a second. Do you mind repeating that?
Jeanette just wants to know if all the fancy new features are going to raise her cost of she pays for HubSpot.
The truth is, I don't know. That's the packaging of these things will be done different. It will be done sort of separately, and I'm sure it'll evolve over time. I can be sure that, like, one thing I will say that we talk a lot about is being conscious enough about costs and values to have a really, really clear ROI story. We don't think anybody should have to adopt AI on spec just to keep up and sort of like with uncertain returns. We want to make sure that the messaging behind each of these is a really clear value proposition, and you can figure out pretty easily whether you would achieve that value proposition or not. So there's transparency is the part of the picture that I know we're investing in a lot.
Cool. Waylon says, something that bothers me with the current AI implementation in HubSpot is that while AI is everywhere, it's not the same AI. The Breeze action and workflows is totally isolated from the AI that's generating reports, which is different from the agents who are all different from each other, etc. So business context isn't even a single thing. It's more like 8 different sets of context that all need to be maintained and or tuned to their tasks. How does HubSpot plan to manage all of these different context windows? Are there plans to unify context in some ways across tools?
You are exactly preaching to why we're here. A big part of what we're trying to do is provide a unified context. We don't want to cause a lot of churn for people who have already invested in the existing ways of sort of providing context to HubSpot and so on. So we're trying to take a step-by-step approach to shift it. But you're just exactly describing a big part of my mission here, to make sure that we can build a unified context layer where those pieces do talk to each other. They don't repeat themselves. When you manage them holistically. You shouldn't have the same. You shouldn't have HubSpot AI have 5 different versions of what your business is. There should be one version. So that's exactly what we're working towards over this year.
Great. Crystal's got, I believe this is a feature request. I've skimmed about half of it. Not a question, but a suggestion. I'd love to see AI help with out of office management. I envision there being an option to set someone for coverage, and while a user is out of office, their coverage would get notified of emails received, tasks assigned, deals coming due, etc., plus remove them from relevant round robins, meeting link rotations, etc. Recently had someone go on maternity leave, and it's been difficult to manage their workload. I think AI could help tremendously here.
I love that idea. I think that's one of those interesting ones that is kind of one of the best reasons to have a platform that really is a platform that's extensible. And that includes everything from sort of what faces our SIs and integration partners, but also the like agents.ai and the builders that you can begin to do some tweaking of functionality on top of HubSpot. Different businesses are going to have pretty substantially different workflows around that management, that type of management. And so I have a feeling that's, in my mind, that's the kind of thing that we're more likely to see. We want to make it really easy to build that in the community and to make it easy for individual users to tweak it to their needs, so that it can match exactly the type of coverage that you care about. Now, it's also possible that we could go deeper into the platform with that. I'm not aware of plans that are specifically about that kind of workforce management right now. But given this conversation, I'll look into it.
Well, and Crystal, I would say too, keep an eye on HubSpot has made pretty big strides in user management generally. And I wonder if there was just an account level set yourself to out of office toggle switch, if that would make AI unnecessary. It could just automatically, like, I am out of office, here's my backup, right? Any emails, phone calls, or tasks that come due for me before this date, send it to this person. That could solve a lot of pain without probably a lot of AI, but I don't know for sure.
You reminded me of something there also, Kyle, which is like another thing, which is not like, it's not specific to knowing OOO. It's definitely a thing, whether it's because someone's OOO or, by the way, do people say OOO out loud? I've realized I've never actually done that.
So it's funny, in her question, she typed OOO, and as I said it out loud, I said out of office, but I understood you, so it's fine.
It felt really weird. There are a lot of other reasons you have to move workflow around, right? Like somebody's sick one day, or they're out of office, or your staff moves on and you replace them, or maybe it's just a highly critical conversation, and as a leader, you want to jump in on top of a call that's of very high significance. One of the things we are actively doing that should make this part of the job easier is if we can make that context visible. So, normally a lot of the context of a deal lives in individual sales rep's head, right? They've been working with that deal for a while. And we're bringing a lot more of that out into summaries and meeting preparation tools that should make it a lot easier for you to step into someone else's shoes, no matter why or for how long you're stepping into their shoes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, we have time for a couple more questions here. Jess, again, is there a world coming where Content Hub's brand voice might be trained to understand the voice or tone of different authors? So then we could use Copilot as a ghostwriter for our very busy subject matter experts and thought leaders.
It's interesting you're bringing that up in this Content Hub context. There's definitely a lot of other contexts, like for people sending follow-up emails and prospecting emails and so on. We are building in, when we think about the abstraction of this context layer that we're building, we are building a set of insights that are around the individual user, the HubSpot user who's sitting in their seat. And so, the type of voice that you bring to content creation could definitely be one of those. So that's a timely feature request. we want to learn about users from how they use HubSpot. Ideally you wouldn't need each person individually to describe their own voice. Most people can't even describe their own voice, but it feels like a technically feasible thing to think about, pulling the main qualities of someone's voice after they've been using HubSpot for a little while.
That's amazing. Andrew asked a question I really like. I've never thought of this before. How do you segment the training data between good and bad examples of customer support or sales calls? For example, there may be some calls you don't want to use as an example.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the things that can be, when you're building software, you often have a choice about how opinionated you want to be. And the more opinionated you are, the fewer use cases it works for, but the more sort of the more detail, the more sort of machine learning and AI you can do on those use cases. So if we had one definition of success for how deals worked, it would be easier for us to do this task that you're describing. In reality, SMBs end up using the same tools in very different ways to accomplish their missions. And one of the big challenges that we're working on right now is exactly what you're saying. How can we recognize success and failure in the many forms that it takes place over different companies? So that's definitely top of mind so that we can train those. There are, in my mind, this is the question that you're asking falls partially in between how well can we assess success out of the box, and partially in this category that's come up a couple of times here of control. Can you decide, can you do more active curation of what kinds of training, which materials you want to be used in your training and which ones you don't? Or if you see us misuse something once, can you at least make sure that never happens again? So there's a few different interface patterns. We're trying to do part of that on the predictive side, on understanding what has been successful or a failure, and trying to do part of it on the configuration side, giving you some control to override and give feedback that impacts future performance.
Makes sense. Yeah. I think this is a really interesting question. Like, if you have a customer support rep who is just mean, right? Like, no soup for you. Like, you don't want the AI learning that phrase and using it in responding to tickets. Okay, we have like 2 minutes left, and we are maybe halfway through the questions. So as I said, George, I will export the questions and the chat out. I will send them to you. You can review them. You and your team and your AI powers can sort through them. But if anyone wants to connect with you, follow up with you, what's your preferred method for folks to get in touch?
Definitely drop me a line on LinkedIn. Members of this group can find me at G Davis at HubSpot, but you may find either of those the best place. But I'd love to talk to people who are invested in and have strong opinions about where we are succeeding or failing at AI right now, and where you'd like to see it go. So please do send those invites.
Amazing. Hear that, friends? Your strong opinions are valuable. So go ahead and share those with George and his team. Thanks everyone for being here. George, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. Really appreciate it. That's the end of our show. Hope to see you all back next Tuesday, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, George.